I'm Jim Jasinski, Ohio State University, Department of Extension. I'm here today at the NECIC Urban Farm in Mansfield. And today we're going to talk about different kinds of protective netting to help keep the insects off your plants so you don't end up with plants that are chewed up by flea beetles and cucumber beetles. The first thing you have to know, there are two different kinds of protective coverings. One is a row cover. It has both a season extension component and also an insect exclusion component. And those are great for early in the season, but then as the weather sort of heats up, then that doesn't work so well for the plants. They begin to get overheated and wilt. And so really, later in the season, those aren't a great choice. But there's another kind of material called ProtekNet netting, which is more of a fine woven mesh, which doesn't really trap heat, but it does exclude insects, especially in this case cucumber beetles and flea beetles. What you see beside me here is a planting of melons that just went in. We're in the end of May, and in the next week or two we're going to see the emergence of striped cucumber beetles from the overwintering locations. Now if these plants weren't protected, if those beetles got in here and started feeding, they stand a very good chance of spreading bacterial wilt, and then we could lose these plants. By installing these protective nets over the top of these plants, we don't really increase any of the temperature, but we do exclude the insects. The material that we're using today, these white hoops, that's actually 3/4 inch PEX tubing, just like you get at the hardware store. We've got rebar that's driven into the ground about 10 inches, and the ends of the PEX tubing are slipped over the rebar to make the hoop. The actual hoop is about 3 feet tall and about 6 feet wide. This netting that we have, this ProtekNet netting, is then comes in long spools. We cut it and then fit it over the top of this raised bed, and we use these green clips to then hold that netting in place. So right now the irrigation's on, and we don't plan to get into this bed again if we have to do some weeding or some other activity. So one thing to keep in mind if you use these protective coverings is that when these plants flower, they need pollination. So these nets have to come off so that the pollinators, the bees, the bumblebees, the honeybees, can get into these plants and then give us fruit. If we keep the covers on, no matter if it's a row cover or a ProtekNet netting cover, you're going to get very little or no fruit. So instead of using an insecticide option to treat, these growers decide they want to try this exclusion netting, which stands a fairly good chance of keeping the insects out and really giving them damage-free plants through at least the flowering stage. On some of these, we might actually keep the netting on and grab pollinators like squash bees or maybe bumblebees and throw them inside the cover so they can pollinate inside while we're still keeping the beetles out. So if you decide to use protective netting to keep insects off of your crops, here are a few things to be paying attention to. One is that the netting seals tightly with the ground to prevent any insects from getting under the netting and into the area where your plants are being protected. The second thing is, what are you going to use to support that netting? There's various kinds of tubing. In this case, we've used 3/4 inch PEX tubing. You could use 1/2 inch PEX, you could use conduit, you can use PVC, whatever you have available, whatever you're used to using, that should work just fine. If you have any more questions, please feel free to contact me.